Pursue more by not following traditional financial planning advice. In this episode, I'm going to address how creative destruction is transforming the financial services industry. Get ready. This is going to surprise you. So, I'm Doug Andrew, and I've been a financial strategist and retirement planning specialist now for north of 48 years. And I have been called an industry transformer by many coaches. One of my favorite coaches is Dan Sullivan. He has coached over 6,000 of the world's top entrepreneurs. And he interviewed me as one of 12 segments on creative destruction. So I'm going to talk about what that is, but before I do that, if this intrigues you or you want to share this with somebody, be sure and click like or share, post a comment, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet, because it's free, and I post an in-depth episode almost on a daily basis. I've been a financial strategist, as I said, for 48 years, and a lot of times people will say, Doug, you're sort of an outlier. You do not follow the herd. Yes, I have learned that it's best not to follow the herd or listen to the mainstream media because, frankly, they're part of the herd. And so when it comes to money and financial strategies, a lot of people are saving for long-term goals such as retirement or college funding for their kids and grandkids or working capital for their business or real estate management, emergency funds, what have you, any long-term goal. And oftentimes we sort of just get caught up in following the herd where we work. We just put money in the company's 401k, or we put money in tax-deferred IRAs. And about 91% of Americans follow the herd, putting money in tax-deferred accounts, being told that they're likely going to be in a lower tax bracket when they retire. And what I found is that has not been true or axiomatic now for more than 25 years. But it took the financial services industry until about 15, 20 years ago to finally admit that was not really the truth for many Americans. Those who save money did not usually find themselves in a lower tax bracket, but they continue to say, oh, just defer and we'll worry about taxes down the road. You know, a better step, in my opinion, is a Roth approach, and I'll explain why in other episodes, and we'll get to that. But I've never been really a conformist, but it's so hard to change people's thinking once they get caught in this mentality of just doing what everybody else is doing. And so I've learned in life that I've never really grown until I got out of my comfort zone. If you just stay there in the comfort zone and you go into the financial services industry as a financial planner, oftentimes you don't want to, go against the flow. And so you buy into this concept of, just tell people to defer tax, procrastinate it to some future perceived unknown advantage and put money in the company's 401k because everybody's doing it. And you'll be safe if you just conform. Well, it's interesting because a fiduciary is supposed to look out for somebody's best interest. And if you can see that somebody's a saver and they're really not going to be in a lower tax bracket when they retire because they are saving a lot of money, you're not really looking out for their best interest if you continue to let them put money in a tax-deferred IRA, 401k, 457, 403b, pension, profit-sharing plan, or whatever. It would be far better to fund a retirement account with after-tax dollars, sort of like a Roth approach. Now, if you watch any of my episodes, you will learn that I've never owned an IRA or 401k, and I never will. But I've never owned a Roth IRA or 401k and never will because of what I teach. And so I've written 12 books in my life, and my 11th book is called The Laser Fund. And I'm going to share with you what I actually explain or outline in the very first chapter, which talks about creative destruction and how to pursue more. So what is creative destruction? As mentioned, a very good friend of mine, strategic coach Dan Sullivan, and I was part of his mastermind group for 20 years. he introduced me to this concept, which was sort of the brainchild of Joseph Schumpeter. And Mr. Schumpeter talked about this concept that in different industries, and we're going to talk about the financial services industry in particular in this episode, oftentimes as the public is employing strategies and the financial advisors in this case are beginning to employ different strategies for their clients. Many times there are different regulators that come in, and regulations are good, but sometimes we start to get over-regulated and they start to dictate what you can, what you can't say, and so forth. So, for example, I'm going to go back when I first started nearly 5 decades ago. One of my favorite vehicles, which I now call the Laser Fund, it is a max-funded tax-advantaged insurance contract. And this allows you to accumulate your money totally tax-free, and then you can access that money tax-free to generate tax-free income. And when you ultimately die, anything left in the account blossoms and transfers tax-free. But it must be structured correctly and funded properly, so you have to know what you're doing. Well, when I first started, I was taught to call it a non-qualified private pension because people could understand what a pension was. That's a vehicle, financial vehicle, where you accumulated money for usually retirement, right? And so that was an appropriate term. It was a non-qualified, meaning it's not in the IRS where you deduct the amount of money you put in. And it's not regulated by those guidelines as you might have under ERISA or whatever. And so it was a non-qualified a private pension, meaning you own this yourself. It was not funded by some corporation or what have you. So it was a really powerful term. But then the regulators said, well, golly, people are getting confused. And so we're gonna ban that. You can't use that term anymore. And so then we started using different variations that got approved by legal counsel and all the compliance officers. And we went through this evolution over several years from non-qualified private retirement plan, and then retirement planning alternative, and then retirement planning alternative to IRAs. And then we had to add 401ks. And pretty soon we were saying sentences this long, and you've probably seen this. You have to say all these disclaimers. And generally what happens is you're trying to help a few people who were confused, and then you're making the other 99% really confused because you're having to say things a certain way, or you cannot explain it in the common language that most people understand. And so who actually suffers at the end of the day? It's the general public. And so this is what Joseph Schumpeter would call creative destruction. We get creative, and the regulators and all of them put all these restrictions and all these parameters and regulations in place. And then pretty soon the public is just going, oh, come on. And so there are industry transformers that then bypass. They bypass the industry, and they begin to explain it in layman's terms. And many times they have to give up their professional licenses, like I did in 2005, to become a consumer advocate and to get on the radio and to get a YouTube channel like this one, or TV, and write books. Because as an author, I'm an authority. That's where the word author comes from. I'm an authority on these subjects. But in order to explain it in a way that the public would understand, I do it compliant, but I can't call something an investment because you won't believe this. The financial services industry will not let you call your house an investment. And yet most Americans, if you said, so are you investing in home ownership? They would say yes. Or do you consider your house an investment? Yes. In the financial services industry, you cannot call a house an investment. Did you know that? One of my favorite vehicles that allows you to accumulate your money tax-free, be able to access the money tax-free, and when you die, it blossoms and transfers tax-free. But I've earned average returns of 9.62% for over 40 years. And at the end of the day, when I die, every million I leave behind blossoms to 2 million tax-free, but every million I accumulate while I'm alive can generate 80 to 100,000 a year of tax-free income based upon actual history and some of the worst periods since the Great Depression, without running out of money. And so I ask people, what would you call something that does that? And they say, well, a miracle, a godsend in this topsy-turvy world. But you cannot call my favorite vehicle an investment. Isn't that strange? And so I'm fine with that because investments now have been defined pretty much by the financial services industry as something that is volatile. You can make money, you can lose money, including your principal, and investments are typically taxed sooner or later. And so that's what we mean by creative destruction. And this is why many times my coaches have said, Doug, you think out of the box. If you get out of your comfort zone, that's the only time I've ever grown. And so people call me sometimes a contrarian, that I go against the traditional advice, which I do. The traditional advice is, defer into traditional IRAs or 401ks, and you'll likely be in a lower bracket when you retire. I'm talking about a tax bracket. Well, that has not been true or axiomatic now for more than 25 years, but it took the financial services industry until about 10 years ago to finally admit that was not the best advice. Hello, if you're a fiduciary, you're supposed to be looking out for somebody's best interest. And if you can tell that they're not going to be in a lower tax bracket when they retire because they're a saver, why are you postponing tax to some future perceived unknown advantage when they're going to be in a higher bracket? You should maybe switch and go to a Roth approach and pay taxes in today's lower brackets and enjoy the money down the road tax-free. But 91% of Americans are duped following the herd because of this industry standard. Put money into tax-deferred IRAs or 401ks and you'll be safe. You won't be sued if you just follow the herd. Well, because I don't follow the herd, I've never owned an IRA or 401k, never will. I've never owned a Roth IRA or 401k, never will, because my favorite vehicle, which I call the laser fund, has the 2 benefits of a Roth and 4 additional benefits Roths will never have. But I had to sort of let all of my licenses go, which I gladly did the last business day of 2005, to become a consumer advocate, to write books, get on the radio, TV, now this YouTube channel, and explain things in language that you can understand. And so what happens is it hurts the consumer when we have so much regulations, you can't even tell people in the language that they need to understand because it's not compliant. You can't call it that. And so that's really sad. So the purpose of the book, all of the books that I've written, especially the book I'm referring to right now is book number 11. It's called The Laser Fund, is to help you break away and see some opportunities that maybe you didn't know existed before. And the biggest question I get asked is, well, how come I haven't heard of this before? Well, you've been listening to traditional financial planning advice, following the herd. And then when people finally learn of something better, they go, oh, okay, yeah, this is different. And so my invitation to you is, you need to pursue more by not necessarily following traditional financial planning advice, following the herd, and pay attention to some of the financial services industry transformers. And I was featured in one of 10 episodes that Dan Sullivan did based upon creative destruction and how the financial services industry is imploding. And I've basically escaped and helped many, many people choose something that not is just good, but is better or absolutely best. So I always have a ditty that goes good, better, best, never let it rest. Never let it rest till good gets better and better gets best. So this is why I wrote the Laser Fund book. And the very first chapter in this book talks about this very concept. So the purpose here is for you to be able to see some opportunities that maybe you didn't know existed before. It's not the same old traditional advice. And it's not for everybody if you like to follow the herd, so to speak. But you will do far better, but you must understand it correctly. And so I am going to invite you to claim a free copy of this 300-page book. You don't have to pay $20. That's retail on Amazon. I will gift you a copy of this 300-page book, and it's actually 2 books in one. This side is about 200 pages, 14 chapters with all the charts and graphs and explanations of how to diversify and create the foundation for a tax-free retirement, not just tax-deferred, okay? If you learn more by stories and examples, you flip over to this book. This is about 100 pages, 12 chapters with 62 actual client stories. Right brain, left brain. If you want to use your whole brain, you can read both books. But you go to Laser Fund, Laser fund.com. You click on the link below. You contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling. I cover the rest of that cost. I will pay for the book. I'll fire out a hard copy to you. There's also options there to listen and learn or watch and learn. And check out some of the online education that we provide and webinars and even live events maybe in your area. You can even pick the brain of some of the top financial strategists and schedule a time to be able to ask them how any of these concepts may apply to your particular set of circumstances. But this is about you and your brighter future.